Good evening, dear students.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay. So we have discussed geometrical isomerism in our last class. So to begin with, it was structural isomerism. Under stereoisomerism, we have completed geometrical isomerism. And it is optical isomerism. So if a molecule has to be optically active, what is the minimum and sufficient condition?
Chiral center.
Pardon me? I didn't get you.
Chiral centers.
Chiral center. Sometimes there will be chiral center, still the molecule will be optically inactive.
The plane of symmetry should be there.
Plane of symmetry should be there or should not be there?
Should not be there.
Now a molecule which lacks plane of symmetry is also called
A chiral molecule.
a chiral molecule, or also called disymmetric molecule. Okay, so achiral or disymmetric molecule. So the molecule which lacks plane of symmetry is said to be disymmetric, and a molecule which lacks plane of symmetry, how do you sometimes what is the easy way in terms of its mirror image also? Anything related to that? Condition in terms of mirror image.
Mirror image should not be superimposable on original image.
Mirror images should be non-superimposable. So molecules which lack a plane of symmetry will have a mirror image which is non-superimposable. And object and mirror image pair, which are related as object and non-superimposable mirror image, is called
Enantiomer.
enantiomers. Okay, so that means a molecule must have to have its enantiomer, then it will be optically active. Can I say easily like that? Correct, no? A molecule, if it has to be optically active, it has to possess its enantiomer. What is the enantiomer? A non-superimposable mirror image. If the enantiomer is there for a molecule, we say it is having non-superimposable mirror image. If non-superimposable mirror image is there, then we can say it has the lack of plane of symmetry. It lacks plane of symmetry. So these things. So I would say one sentence here. Coordination compounds which lack exhibit optical activity. Okay, and molecules which lack plane of symmetry, these molecules possess their enantiomers. That is non-superimposable mirror image. Non-superimposable mirror. That is enantiomer. Okay. So now we'll see what kind of molecules exhibit this optical activity in coordination compounds. Okay. Optical activity and optical isomerism is exhibited by coordination compounds with coordination number 6. What do you mean by coordination number 6? Around central metal, there will be 6 coordinate bonds. So that is what those complexes are said to be octahedral complexes. Generally, if a metal has 6 bonds, the structure will be octahedral. Okay. Now, compounds or coordination compounds with coordination number 6 are octahedral in structure. Okay. So now we'll see the types of molecules which exhibit optical activity with coordination number 6. Okay. So then we take up MAA thrice. What is that symbol AA? Last time also we represented for geometrical isomerism. MAA thrice means, what does AA symbol represent? A ligand with 2 donor atom. A ligand with 2 donor atom is a bidentate ligand. Okay. MAA thrice means there are 3 bidentate ligands. We'll take an example. CO, EN, thrice, 3 plus. So EN, ethane 1,2-diamine. Now this molecule can have optical isomers. So one thing is the arrangement we can see now. Okay. We'll see how exactly these 3 bidentate ligands can be arranged. Okay. Now, see, there are 2 structures possible for this particular complex. Here, CO is there at the center. It has 6 bonds, 4 in the plane, equatorial, 2 above and below. Okay. And if En is written like this, okay, is it possible to get a structure of this kind? Okay, then En connecting to axial structure. Okay, is it possible? So because all the 3 are bidentate, writing a structure with 2 ligands opposite and 1 ligand connecting the axial bonds wouldn't be possible. So therefore, this structure first of all doesn't exist. Okay. So then what is the other way out? Writing En here, connecting 1 equatorial and axial like this. Like this. Correct? Let's write arrow mark. Now this is possible. Let me write the charge on the complex species. This is 3 plus. Now, do you think this molecule will have enantiomer? Do you think this molecule has enantiomer? That is non-superimposable mirror image.
Sir, it has plane of symmetry. No, sir.
So, jorag matadappa atra.
It has plane of symmetry. No, sir.
It has plane of symmetry. ಅದು ಮಾಲಿಕ್ಯೂಲ್ 2 ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನಲ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ. You will not be able to identify. ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ ಈ mirror image concept. So you should check whether this can have non-superimposable mirror image, because the entire octahedral structure, when we see in the 2 dimension, it doesn't give correct idea. Okay, when you imagine a mirror here, okay, the mirror image of the molecule object would be like this. Like this. Correct? So this is the molecule, its object. And if you lift the mirror image and place it on the object, it doesn't superimpose. Therefore, it has enantiomer. So therefore, this particular arrangement of ligands in octahedral geometry in this complex has its enantiomer. Therefore, it is optically active. Okay. So this is, if I say this is a D isomer, always its mirror image will be L isomer. Okay. This is one type of molecule which can exhibit optical activity or optical isomerism. Next, number 2. So MAA twice B2. There are 2 ligands and 2 bidentate ligands and 2 monodentate ligands. This particular molecule even exhibit geometrical isomerism. We have seen that. So the example for this is, this type is plus lines. Okay. Now, so we'll take up this CO at the center. Okay. Now 6 bonds are there. Like this. Now 2 ligands EN connecting one axial bond and equatorial bond like this. Another like this. Remaining monodentate ligand Cl occupying 2 equatorial positions. This complex carries the +1. So you keep a mirror here. The mirror image seems to be non-superimposable. Right? So here is Cl. Plus, right? So you can see the lift the object or mirror and place it on one another. Cl and Cl fall on bidentate ligand, so which will not mask exactly. So it is non-superimposable. So therefore, this particular pair can act as D and L isomer. So therefore, it can be D isomer, and this is levodopa isomer. Now there is one more arrangement possible for this particular molecule. Okay, I'll just write it in under note. Okay, for this molecule can be this structure also possible. Okay, CO is at the center, 6 bonds. Okay, now if En occupies equatorial bonds, tell me this particular structure of this complex will be optically active or inactive. Means it will have its enantiomer or not?
No, sir.
No enantiomer, sir.
No,
Yes.
because its mirror image will be superimposable. Correct? So I would say has no enantiomer that is has a superimposable mirror image. Therefore, has no isomers and also optically inactive. No. So just know about it. This molecule may exist, but this particular molecule in this geometry would not be optically active. So these are the only two category of coordination compounds which can exhibit the optical isomerism, the two coordination number 6 and octahedral geometry with the condition having enantiomer. Okay. So if you have done with it, I shall proceed further.
Yes.
Are you writing? Should I give time?
1 minute, sir.
Oh, come on.
Done, sir.
Fine. Hope all of you have completed. Let's take up now further. We need to discuss now the theories of coordination compounds. Theories of coordination compounds. See, coordination compounds are also called complex salts, where there is a central metal, there is ligand, there is counterion, everything. To explain such complex compounds, certain theories have been put forward. So we are going to study three theories. One is the basic one, Werner's theory. Next is valence bond theory, the same theory which has been put forward for explaining the covalent bond. No? The same theory, Linus-Pauling valence bond theory. Then comes crystal field theory. Crystal field theory, each theory in that manner will differ from another in terms of explaining the properties of the coordination compounds. So first one, theories of coordination. First one, Werner's theory. Okay, so he is Mr. Alfred Werner. Okay, so it's not Adolf. So Alfred Werner has proposed a theory for the first time to explain the formation of a coordination compound. So that's why the Alfred Werner was also called the father of coordination chemistry. Okay, to start with. Okay, it is the first theory ever proposed. To explain the formation of coordination compounds. Therefore, called coordination chemistry. So now what are the postulates? Simple postulates. There are 4 postulates. Each postulate is specific towards a particular property. Okay, so we'll take a postulate. Number 1. Central metal in a coordination compound, okay, possess two types of valences. two types of valencies. One is primary valency. Another one is secondary valency. Generally atoms possess one valency, that's all. Correct? Now, whatever we have seen so far, valency means there will be one type of valency, that's all, plus or minus. Generally, it indicates the combining ability. So here, there are two types of valence. Okay. Now, in the second postulate, we speak about primary valency. Third postulate, we speak about secondary valency. And in the fourth postulate, we speak about some structures or geometries, that's all. Okay. Second postulate. The primary valency of central metal is equal to its oxidation number. Okay, primary valency of central metal is equal to its oxidation number. Now, generally, we know metals possess positive oxidation number. That positive charge on the metal must be balanced. So, the positive charge on any ion will be balanced by negative charges. That is what we say, it is satisfied by negative charge. The same thing, primary valence of central metal is equal to its oxidation number. It's satisfied by simple negative ions. It's satisfied by only simple negative ions. And this primary valency is variable and also one more word to define this, it is non-directional. Non-directional. Primary valency is equal to oxidation number of central metal and it is satisfied by only simple negative ions. Primary valency of central metal can be varied in different complexes for a metal and it is non-directional. Meaning there is no direction in which it can be satisfied. While speaking about ionic bonds, in chemical bonding, you would have come across ionic bonds are non-directional. So because ionic bonds exist between positive and negative ion, a positive ion can be held by negative ion in any direction because it is electrostatic. Like that, here also it is kind of electrostatic force only. Central metal positive, the simple ions which satisfy that is negative and therefore it is kind of electrostatic. Therefore, it is non-directional. There is no direction in which it can be formed. Any direction, that is the name. Fine. So these are all some of the important points to know about primary valence. Now we'll take up secondary valence. Secondary valence. Secondary valency of central metal is equal to its coordination number. What is coordination number? Number of coordinate bonds around the central metal. So secondary valency of central metal is equal to its coordination number. That is number of coordinate bonds around central metal. Now, which would satisfy this secondary valency of central metal? Because primary valency is nothing but oxidation number. Oxidation number is generally positive for metal. So satisfied by negative ions. So secondary valency now is equal to coordination number, the theory says. Coordination number means number of coordinate bonds. These number of coordinate bonds can be formed by either simple negative ions or neutral molecules. If you see now, we have seen many examples where neutral molecules as well, the negative ions are held by coordinate bonds to the central metal. So the same thing he says, it's satisfied by simple negative ions or neutral molecules. Okay, not positive. Okay, so it is satisfied by simple negative ions or neutral molecules. The next, in primary valency, we spoke about variability. Okay, primary valency is variable. Next, we say it is not variable. And primary valency is said to be non-directional, whereas secondary valency is directional. Correct? So primary valency of central metal is equal to coordination number of the central metal. It's satisfied by simple negative ions or neutral molecules, and not variable. It is directional in nature. That means secondary valence of central metal are pointed towards fixed position in space, and where the simple negative ions or neutral molecules have to come along that and satisfy the valences. That's the meaning. Okay, so we shall proceed further. The last point. Now you take any coordination compound, it will have a perfect geometry. So far we have seen in isomerism, right? You write any coordination compound, it will have one or the other geometry, be it square planar geometry, a tetrahedral geometry, octahedral geometry, so something like that. So coordination compounds are characterized by defined geometries. How come so much defined geometries are possible for the coordination compounds? The theory says these defined geometries of coordination compounds is a resultant aspect of directional nature of secondary valency. Since secondary valencies of central metal are directional, they are pointed towards fixed position in space. Every coordination compound will have perfect geometry. That's the way. Okay. So let me say that. So coordination compounds possess definite geometries. Due to the directional nature of secondary valencies, directional nature of secondary valencies of central metal. Okay. So since secondary valencies are directional, every coordination compounds are perfect geometry. One simple analogy, how directional nature can be responsible for a perfect geometry. When you take one analogy, I just want to give. For example, if you take hair, nose, and the tooth. Okay, hair, nose, teeth. Now there is a directionality which differs. Hair is non-directional. Even if you have very nicely combed, but because of the air, it may be completely disturbed. So hair is non-directional, nose is directional, and teeth are highly directional. If teeth were to be non-directional, I think it would have been very difficult to chew food or assimilate. So teeth are definitely highly directional. Now, how directionality gives rise to geometry? Now, even if you have combed, since it get disturbed, there is no perfect geometry. Okay, you would say that one of person I know, he has a wrinkled hair and he will have always a perfect geometry like that. So excuses could be there, and also that is not a geometry kind of wrinkle structure. Okay, so that you can leave that apart just to understand how directionality results in the structure. So air disturbs the hair, therefore hair is non-directional, there is no geometry. Nose is pointed, it is directional, there is a geometry. Every person will have a particular geometry for the nose. It may be spread across, it may be pointed out, it may be bent, it may be very elongated, whatever. There is a geometry. So because it is pointed, it is directional. And definitely teeth, highly directional, and there is a perfect geometry, definite geometry. So directionality results in perfect geometry is the thing. Okay. So secondary valences would result or would induce a perfect geometry for coordination compounds. Is that okay? So these are 4 postulates, very easy to remember. So I would simply jumble up everything and ask you, I think by now you should be answering. Okay. The valency which is non-directional. Anybody?
Primary valence.
Primary. The valency that is responsible for geometry.
Secondary.
How many valencies for central metal in a coordination compound?
2.
The one which is satisfied by only positive ions.
Primary.
Correct? Huh?
None.
None of them. Both of them doesn't get satisfied by positive ions. The one which is satisfied by only neutral molecules.
Secondary.
Only neutral molecule is wrong again. It can be satisfied by simple negative ions or neutral molecules. The one which is satisfied by only simple negative ions.
Primary.
Primary. And the one which is variable.
Primary.
Not variable.
Secondary.
Ionizable. Ionizable is nothing but variable actually. Ionizable.
Primary.
You can just, I'll write here. Or ionizable. Non-ionizable. Okay. So this is simple theory, the Werner's theory. Okay, we'll take one or two examples and apply this theory, concept of primary, secondary valency, etc., and understand how the primary and secondary valencies are satisfied and all. So it's better it is illustration. Okay. So we take, for example, potassium ferrocyanide, K4FeCl6. Potassium hexacyanodoferrate 2. Okay. Now this particular compound has primary and secondary valency for sure. Okay. So now primary valency. Primary valency is nothing but what? Oxidation number. So can you tell me what is the oxidation number of iron? +4, -6,
+2.
So primary valency is equal to what? Oxidation number, it is +2. And it is satisfied by simple negative ions in the complex. So tell me, the primary valency of iron in this complex is satisfied by potassium or cyanide?
Cyanide.
How many
Cyanide.
will satisfy primary valency? There are 6 cyanide. How many will satisfy primary valency?
2.
Correct, no? So 2 Cn minus satisfy this primary valency. Correct? Now we'll take up secondary valency. What is secondary valence of central metal here?
6.
Because number of coordinate bonds is nothing but coordination number. How many ligands are surrounding iron? 6. They are all monodentate. They form 1 bond each. So 6 ligands, 6 bonds. So secondary valency is 6. Coordination. And this secondary valency must be satisfied by either simple negative ions or neutral molecules. So tell me, the secondary valencies are all satisfied here by potassium or cyanide?
Cyanide.
Cyanide. So how many cyanide will satisfy primary valence?
6.
Secondary valence. 6 Cn minus, which are all present there, all will satisfy the secondary valence. That's the meaning. Okay. Now we'll take up another complex. Complex of iron, K3FeCl6. This is potassium ferricyanide. Potassium ferrocyanide is first one, oxidation state of iron +2. Potassium ferricyanide is, this is +3, -6, plus oxidation state of iron +3 is potassium ferricyanide. Now again, the iron has the 2 types of valencies, primary valency and secondary valency. The primary valency of central metal, how much is that? Primary valency?
+3.
You can calculate, it is found to be +3. Satisfied by how many Cn minus n?
3.
3 Cn minus would satisfy this. Secondary valence of central metal is how much?
6.
6. Satisfied by 6? Cn minus 7. Now, comparing 1 and 2, you can also understand one more important point that the theory has pointed out. Primary valency of central metal is variable or secondary valency is variable?
Primary valency.
Primary valency is variable. You can see primary valency of iron in the first complex is +2. In the next complex is +3. It's variable. And secondary valency of iron in the first complex is 6. In the next complex is also 6, not variable. Correct? No? So when I say that, correct? Secondary valency not variable. 6, 6. Primary valency variable. Or ionizing. So this is how it is. We'll take one more example. Cu NH3 4 times SO4. Cupromonium sulfate. Correct? Copper is the central metal. We'll calculate oxidation number -2, 0, 2 plus. So, when you speak of the primary and secondary valencies, what is primary valency?
+2.
Satisfied by which one?
0.
What?
Shouldn't it be 0?
Primary valency is equal to oxidation number. Why it should be 0? Oxidation number of copper is +2. Okay. Wait, what was the confusion? Can you tell me?
Statement they have given satisfied by simple negative ions.
Simple negative ion is there? No. Sulfate. So satisfied by sulfate, SO4 2 minus. That +2 is satisfied by sulfate, not ammonia. Okay. So next, secondary valency. What is secondary valency of copper?
4.
4. There are 4 bonds. Satisfied by? Four
Ammonia.
amine ligands. Okay. So that's the thing. So fine. You take any copper complex, copper will be generally having this secondary valency 4. Primary valency may be different, but copper by and large it has +2 primary valency itself. Is it okay? So are you writing this or completed? Should I wait?
Done, sir.
So this is about Werner's theory. Okay. And also if you want, you can mention one more point. The secondary valencies, 6 secondary valencies of iron in both the complexes are pointed towards the corners of a octahedron. Okay. That's why 6 secondary valencies pointed, because they are directional, towards corners of a octahedron, therefore has OH structure. Right. Whereas here in cupromonium sulfate, the 4 secondary valencies are pointed towards corner of a square. Therefore, it has square planar structure. That's the theory, okay, which explains the geometry. Fine. This is about Werner's theory, postulates and application. Now, Werner's theory was the first theory which explained the formation of coordination compounds, but later the theory had important drawbacks due to which the theory fails. So we'll just write down the limitations. So here coordination compounds are found to be formed by only certain set of metals. Okay, why only? That is D block elements form coordination compounds. I'll just go compound. Why only D block elements form coordination compounds? No answer. Right? The theory thus fails to distinguish the primary and secondary valency. What is the need for two valencies? Why not a primary valency alone can do, or secondary valency alone can do? And why secondary valency is directional? Simply he said directional. Okay. So why secondary valency is directional? The theory fails. In certain complexes, both primary and secondary valencies will be satisfied by simple negative ions. So, how a simple negative ion satisfy both primary and secondary valencies? Okay. For example, you take this iron complexes. You can see here, there are 6 cyanide in the complex. If all the 6 satisfy secondary valency, there should be 2 more Cn minus to satisfy primary valency. But the theory says out of 6, all the 6 will satisfy secondary valency. 2 of 6 will also satisfy primary valency, but which was not satisfactory. Okay. And also the theory later, magnetic and spectral properties were found, did not account or no explanation for spectral property, means color property actually, magnetic property of complex. So these are some of the main points where the theory fails. Okay. Now, important theory we are going to take up, that is valence bond theory. Okay, valence bond. Valence bond theory. Okay. Proposed by Linus Pauling. And others. Okay, so fine. Now the theory incorporates the concept of hybridization as similar to the covalent molecules which we have seen in last year chemical bonding chapter. So hybridization is important for geometry and everything, right? So the same thing. Now some of the important postulates of this theory are like this. Central metal has vacant orbitals. Central metal has vacant orbitals. The number of vacant orbitals is equal to the coordination number. Okay, the number of vacant orbitals is equal to coordination number of central. Okay, I would call vacant orbital V1. These vacant orbitals undergo, okay, hybridization. These vacant orbitals undergo hybridization. And hybridization defines the geometry. coordination compounds. Okay, vacant orbitals undergo hybridation. This hybridation defines the geometry of coordination compounds. Now, if sp hybridation takes place, the structure will be linear. sp2 triangular. This we know all, right? sp3 tetrahedron. dsp2 square planar. sp3d trigonal bipyramidal. sp3d2 or d2sp3 octahedron. Like that. So vacant orbitals which are present in central material undergo hybridization, and hybridization is responsible for the geometry. That's it. Okay. The third postulate. Okay. Now we spoke first 2 points about central. Now third about a ligand. Okay. So a ligand is a species which contains a pair of electrons in its atomic orbitals. A was. Okay, atomic orbital. Fourth one. Now, fourth point is about how a coordinate bond is formed. Okay, how a coordinate. Now, when atomic orbital of ligand containing this pair of electrons, okay, overlap with HOs, hybrid orbitals of central metal, a coordinate bond is formed. A coordinate bond is formed. So when atomic orbitals of ligand containing pair of electrons overlap with atomic or hybrid orbital of central metal, a coordinate bond is formed. Now, if once the bond is formed between ligand and central metal, then it is as good as forming the coordination compound also. Now, if once the compound is formed, then if the complex formed contains unpaired electrons, it's called, or it behaves as paramagnetic. So the theory explains magnetic nature. That's the name. The complex formed, if contains unpaired electron, behaves as paramagnetic. The complex formed, if contains only paired electrons or no unpaired electrons, it behaves as diamagnetic. What is paramagnetic nature?
Attracted by electric field.
When coordination compound is kept in external magnetic field, if it is attracted by external magnetic field weakly, it is paramagnetic. Repelled, diamagnetic. There is no ferromagnetism accounted here. Only para and the ferro. Para and diamagnetic. Okay. So these are some of the important postulates of the theory. There is one more thing which you can just add it as a note here. Okay. So the complex formed will be called inner orbital complex. There are two types here. Okay, inner orbital complex and outer orbital complex. What is inner orbital complex? You know, the complex which is formed by involving orbitals, atomic orbitals of valence shell and also inner shells for hybridization. Okay, if complex involves the valence orbitals and inner orbitals both for hybridization, then it is inner orbital complex. If the complex is formed by utilizing only valence orbitals, then it is outer orbital complex. Okay, so it is formed by involving atomic orbitals of valence shell and inner shells for hybridization. Okay, and this is formed only by valence shell atomic orbitals. Okay, only valence shell atomic. So this is about inner orbital complex and outer orbital complex. Right. Now what we'll do, application of valence bond theory we'll take up now. That is to explain the formation of certain complexes. We are going to apply the concept of valence bond theory and thus try to understand things. Okay, let's proceed further.
Could you show the previous page, the 1 minute?
Yes. Okay. Last pointer.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Application of VBT. They'll ask you in the examination, explain the formation of so-and-so complex based on VBT and comment on the magnetic property, hybridization and structure. Okay, so first one. Formation of NiCl4 times 2 minus. Tetrachlorido nickelate 2 ion, correct? IUPAC. Now, the theory says the central metal in the coordination compound has number of vacant orbitals. Those vacant orbitals undergo hybridization, and those hybrid orbitals will define the structure by overlapping with atomic orbitals of ligand containing pair of electron. The bond will be formed like that. Now, for that, let us write the electronic configuration of nickel and find out how many vacant orbitals are there which can be involved in hybridization, all such things. Okay, so nickel atomic number 28, electronic configuration argon 18, 3d8, 4s2. But this complex contains nickel plus 2, correct? No, if you calculate this oxidation state, x minus 4 is equal to minus 2, therefore x is equal to plus 2. X is equal to plus 2. Okay, so but Ni2 plus ion. Okay, so now 3d8 means there will be 2 unpaired electron remaining. Okay, there are 4 ligands also. You should remember that the complex has 4 Cl ligands. So there is in the same shell, 4th shell, there is 4p orbital which is also vacant. So if I represent a 3D electronic configuration in terms of this box, eight electrons 2 electron unpaired, right? Now this 4s is vacant. 4p is also vacant. Okay, this is the thing. Now the theory says that when 4Cl minus ligand approach Ni2 plus, 1 s orbital, 4s orbital, and 3 4p orbitals undergo hybridization. Okay, so 1 s orbital and 3p orbital undergoing hybridization could be termed as what hybridization? What hybridization?
sp3.
Hmm?
sp3.
sp3 hybridization. sp3 hybridization gives rise to what structure?
Tetrahedral.
Tetrahedral structure. Okay, so I would just mention here, when 4 Cl minus ligands approach Ni2 plus, 4s and 4p AOs undergo sp3 hybridization. These 4 hybrid orbitals, what do they do? Overlap with 4 or we say atomic orbitals of Cl minus ligand. Better. Overlap with atomic orbitals of Cl minus ligand to form how many bonds? 4 coordinate bonds. Okay, so I'll just mention this. Okay, so put a dotted line here. Correct. So this results in 4 orbitals of same energy and same shape. That is what hybridization, right?
Yes, sir.
Now this is sp3 hybrids line. Okay. Now these 4 hybrid orbitals overlap with atomic orbitals of ligand containing pair of electron, and those pair of electron will be present here in these orbitals. Now these are the electron pairs which we are writing here inside the hybrid orbitals, which are obtained after overlapping with the atomic orbital of ligand. So they are the electrons of ligands actually, which have been obtained by overlapping of atomic orbital with hybrid orbitals. Is it okay? Now see, this is the electronic arrangement of electronic arrangement around nickel plus 2 in this complex. So tell me, is there any unpaired electrons remaining in the nickel ion after forming the bonds? Is there still? Okay, let me write this again. The entire thing. See this 3D8 has electrons which were previously present, like this. Now this is the electronic arrangement around nickel plus 2 ion in the complex. So tell me, is there any unpaired electrons still remaining around nickel plus 2 ion in the complex after the formation of bond? Yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
See, this is the electronic arrangement 3D8, and sp3 has all the pair of electrons from ligands. Okay, So nickel has this kind of electronic arrangement. You can see 3d8 and sp3. All the 4 orbitals of sp3 contain pair of electron. That's the electronic arrangement. Around nickel plus 2 ion in the complex now. Is there any unpaired electron remaining?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
How many
sir.
unpaired electrons are remaining?
2 unpaired.
Because of that, this complex is paramagnetic or diamagnetic?
Paramagnetic.
Paramagnetic. So unpaired electrons makes the complex paramagnetic. So can you tell me what is the magnetic moment of this complex?
Root of 8.
Root of n into n plus 2.
Root 12, sir.
4, 8, 2.83 or so, something like that, right? So it will be around 2.8 like. So we'll just write this structure and comment on the magnetic property. Two things, okay? No. Sumed is asking, is there any excitation that takes place or won't it take place, something like that. The theory doesn't consider the pairing or unpairing of electron. There is something which the theory in the next complex you will see. Okay, in the next complex, same nickel complex we are going to take. There, the 2 unpaired electron undergo pairing. Here, 2 unpaired electron doesn't undergo pairing. The theory doesn't show or throw any light on explaining this concept. Okay, that becomes a drawback of this theory. Okay, so later in crystal field theory, you will come to know something about why pairing and why unpairing. If at all, if excitation takes place, why, all those things in the next theory. Since that part is not explained by this VBT, I am also not incorporating in my explanation. Okay, so next theory is we see a crystal field theory that says there are 2 types of ligands which are strong field, weak field. When strong field ligand approach, pairing takes place, unpaired electron. If weak field ligand approach, pairing doesn't take place like that. But the theory simply says electron remains or doesn't remain. Why it remains or why it gets paired, the theory doesn't answer this. That becomes a drawback of this theory. Now we are studying this theory, no? So, however, the theory is explaining in the same manner. We are going to write it. That's all. Okay. Right. So now we'll make 2 comments here. Since the complex formed contains unpaired electrons, it's a paramagnetic complex. It's a paramagnetic complex. Next, one more comment we'll make is whether this complex is called outer orbital complex or inner orbital complex. Can you tell me? For the complex to be called as outer orbital, only valence orbital should undergo hybridization. So is it outer orbital complex or inner orbital complex?
Outer orbital complex.
Is an outer orbital complex. As only valence orbitals undergo hybridization. And the last comment we make is about structure. Due to sp3 hybridization, it is tetrahedral. Okay, and the geometry of the complex. Nickel at the center.
Sir, second point.
I'll show that. and this entire complex has the charge. There is 2 negative. So that's all. If you want, you can join these bonds to one another to make it feel like tetrads. Correct? Yes. You can talk. Right. Is it complete now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Likewise, remaining complexes also must be explained now. Okay. Whatever is there in our syllabus, we'll first finish off. So I would give little more complexes when it comes to the CT discussion. Okay. Same way, you need to discuss that. Second complex. Formation of NiCN 4 times, not Cl, it is Cn. Just the ligand is different, and because of that, all the properties, structure, everything will be different. Now, steps will be same. Nickel. Correct? Ni2 plus I. Simultaneously you can write. (3d8) 4s0. 4 ligand means there should be 4p orbital also involved in the hybridization. Okay. Five d orbital, 1 s orbital, 3p orbitals. Right? Now 8 electrons. Like this. Now the theory says something strange. Now when Cn minus ligand has to make bond, 4 orbitals are required, right? The theory simply says this sentence, doesn't give any explanation for that. 2 unpaired electrons of 3d undergo pairing and create a vacant d orbital. If they undergo pairing, obviously 2 electron unpaired will pair up into 1 orbital. 1 orbital d becomes vacant. So create a vacant d orbital. Since d orbital become vacant, that also will be involved in hybridization. 4 ligands require 4 hybrid orbitals. So one d orbital is vacant, one d orbital, one s orbital, 2 p orbital will be involved in hybridization. So as a result, I would write nickel like this. Now Ni2 plus argon 18, 3d8, 4s, 4. All the d electrons would have been paired. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has been paired into 4 pairs. One d orbital is vacant now. One s orbital, 3 p orbitals. Now 4 ligands are there, Cn minus. To bond with nickel, they require 4 hybrid orbitals, and 4 hybrid orbitals will always be obtained by involvement of 4 vacant orbitals. Which are the 4 vacant orbitals? Since d orbital has become vacant now, it can undergo hybridization. Like this. Now, what hybridization is this? DsP2 hybridization. Okay. Now, if you want, you can write once again. One little explanation for that. Okay. 1d s and 2p orbitals form dsp2 hybrids which overlap with the atomic orbitals of 4 Cn minus ligands to form 4 coordinate bonds. 4 coordinate bonds. Let me write it again. Now DsP2 hybridization. How much is remaining with 3D? It is only 4 remaining now. All the 4 d orbitals have paired electrons. Now this is 1, 2, 3, 4 hybrid orbitals. Those hybrid orbitals also have pair of electrons donated from ligands. Right? Now, the nickel plus 2 ion, after the formation of bond with the 4 cyanide ligands, will have this kind of arrangement of electrons surrounding it in the complex. Tell me, is there any unpaired electron or no?
No.
No, sir.
No. So no unpaired electron means it is paramagnetic or diamagnetic?
Diamagnetic.
Diamagnetic. And is it a inner orbital complex or outer orbital complex?
Inner orbital.
Because along with valence orbitals, inner d orbital also take part in hybridization. So it is inner orbital complex. And what is the structure because of dsp2 hybridization?
Square planar.
Like that. Come on. Let's point out all those important things. Okay. Due to only paired electrons. Due to dsp2 hybridization, it is square planar. Square planar means nickel at the center. CN, 4 CN at the corners. Right arrow mark, don't forget. And the entire complex, there will be +2 charge. Shall I proceed now?
Yes, sir.
Sir, isn't it 2 minus?
Correct. 2 minuses. Like that, 2 more complexes are there. We'll explain. Okay. Formation of CONH3, not 4 times, 6 times. Hexaamine cobalt 3 ion, correct? Now, we'll speak about central metal. Correct? CO3 plus is the oxidation state. Atomic number of cobalt is 27. Argon 18. 3d6 and 4 is 0. Why? Remove 3 electron. The electronic configuration of cobalt will be argon 18, 3d7, 4s2. Here you have to remove 3 electron. It becomes 3d6 and 4s0. 6 ligands definitely require more number of orbitals, so write 4p also. Six electrons will have 1 paired and remaining 4 unpaired. Okay. Now the theory says these 4 unpaired electrons undergo pairing. Why? The theory doesn't say that. Okay. Undergo pairing. Okay. I told you, no, when I take up CFT, if you look back into this formation of this complex, we'll come to know why pairing is taken. Okay. So 4 unpaired electrons undergo pairing, vacating. If 4 paired into 2 pair, 2 3d orbitals will be vacant. Now those 3d orbital whichever is vacant now also can be involved in hybridization. Okay. Now 6 ligands are there, require 6 hybrid orbitals, and 2 of them will be this vacant orbitals here like this. Those 2 orbitals plus 1 s orbital, remaining 3 orbital have to undergo hybridization because 6 ligands no require 6 hybrid orbitals. 2d, 1s, 3p. What should be the hybridization therefore? What is the hybridization called? D2sp3, right? So CO3 plus undergoes D2sp3 hybridization to form 6 hybrid orbitals, HOs. 6 atomic orbitals of 6 NH3 ligands overlap to form 6 coordinate bonds. Okay, better say this. Better say this. Atomic orbitals of 6 ammonia ligands overlap with overlap to form 6 coordinate bonds. Like this. Okay. So we shall write this. Six electrons, 2 d orbital are vacant now, correct? And these are the 3 p orbitals. So hybridization: 2 d orbital, 1 s orbital, and 3 p orbitals. So this is D2sp3 hybridization. Which can be represented like this. (3d6) with these 3 orbitals. Correct. Now D2sp3 hybrid orbitals 6. They would all contain electrons of ligands. Correct. Now tell me, the cobalt 3 plus ion has this kind of electronic arrangement, 3d6 and D2sp3 12 total. This complex is paramagnetic or diamagnetic?
Diamagnetic.
Because of absence of unpaired electrons or presence of paired electrons?
Both.
Both. Correct. And then comes, it is inner orbital complex or outer orbital complex?
Inner orbital complex.
And it is structure. What is the structure?
Octahedral.
Octahedral, correct. We'll write all those things. Copy down this. Like this, we have one more complex. Let's finish off. I have put in the group that I would take 15 minutes extra today. Is this complete now? To make it look like octahedral, you can join all the four corners of the square to the axial bonds above and below. Sometimes it looks very clumsy also. Better avoid this. For example, it looks like this. Eight faces, above 4, below 4. Shall I proceed now?
Yes, sir.
And the last concept, complex that we need to explain the formation is look at that cobalt with 3 negative charges on the complex. It's an anionic complex. Same thing we'll do. Correct? Same thing. CO3 please. Six ligands require sp also. It rather even requires D also here. Better write that also. Okay. Now 3d6 means 4 unpaired electrons. In this complex, the theory says unpaired electrons of 3d would not undergo pairing. So since they doesn't undergo pairing, the 3d orbital will not be vacant, will not become vacant. So when they doesn't become vacant, they will not be utilized for hybridization. But 6 ligand requires 6 hybrid orbitals. So which are the only possibility? 1 s orbital, 3 p orbitals, and 2 outer d orbitals. They can undergo hybridization. Correct? So I would say one sentence. Okay. Hybridize. 4 unpaired electrons do not pair up, hence 4p, not 4p, 4s. 4s, 4p, and 2 4d orbitals hybridize to form sp3d2. It is not d2 sp3, Since it is outer 4d orbital involved in hybridization, it is accordingly called sp3d2 hybridization. sp3d2 hybrids. What do they do? Which overlap with F minus, better say, of atomic orbitals. Overlap with atomic orbitals of 6 F minus ligands to form 6 coordinate bonds. To form 6 coordinate bonds. So we would represent that. Okay, see the hybridization 1s, 3p, and 2dr. sp3d2. sp3d2 hybridization. Okay. So these hybrid orbitals overlap with the atomic orbital to form bonds, and there are 5 d orbitals with 4 unpaired electron as such intact. So CO3 plus argon 18, the 3d6 as it is. And there is sp3d2 hybrid orbitals. Totally 6. They will have electrons. These 6 are basically cobalt electrons, whereas these 6 electrons which I am going to write now, they are the electron pairs obtained by overlapping of hybrid orbital with ligand. Correct? So now tell me, this is the electronic arrangement of cobalt plus 3 ion in the complex. Is it paramagnetic or diamagnetic?
Paramagnetic.
Pardon me?
Paramagnetic.
Paramagnetic. What is the magnetic moment?
Root 24.
That is 4 point. See, if 4 unpaired electron is there, magnetic moment will be 4 point something. 3 unpaired electron, 3 point something. 2 unpaired electron, 2 point something. 1 point something. 5 point something. So 4.87, if you can remember better. And 5.91 for 5 electron. Okay, no problem. We'll comment these 3 things. So what is the structure?
Octahedral structure.
Outer orbital, inner orbital.
Outer orbital.
Para, dia.
Para.
See, what is the difference between previous one and this one? This is D2 sp3 hybridization, octahedral and diamagnetic. And this one is sp3d2. See, look at the D2 has been written afterwards, after SNP. That itself shows it is outer orbital complex. And the octahedral and the inner electron is not disturbed, so paramagnetic. Let me write those points.
Sir, it can form D2 sp3 only, no, sir?
No. Theory, what it explains, we have learnt. The theory says 4 unpaired electrons remain unpaired only. They do not undergo pairing. If they do not undergo pairing, inner d orbital do not become vacant. If they are not vacant, they cannot be involved in hybridization. That's the concept. Okay.
Yes.
It's paramagnetic due to one paired electron. Okay. So similarly, it's this is the structure. This theory doesn't explain why D2sp3 is not possible. Why only sp3d2? Next theory, CFT, when we understand that, we can look back into this complex and understand why it is only sp3d2 and not D2sp3. Now, whatever theory has been told, that much we'll understand. That becomes a drawback of this theory also later. This complete now?
Yes.
Is this complete now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are some of the complexes which we had to discuss. Next will be crystal field theory. We'll take up in the next class. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.